Africa Today. Hello everyone and very warm welcome to a new edition of Africa Today, which we are addressing all the issues related to the African continent. And actually the African issues are really so significant for Egypt and for the for President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi is always addressing the issues of the African continent as if they are really top priority for Egypt. That's why we are talking today, first of all, concerning the Finance Minister, Mr. Ahmed Kojak. He emphasized the necessity of intensified efforts to boost the Africa's economic transformation, supported by the international partners and the private sector, also of course concerning the debts of the Africa. Let's watch this report and come back.
Of intensified efforts to boost Africa's economic transformation, supported by the international partners and the private sector. Koshok also highlighted the need for African countries to adopt more consistent and integrated economic policies focused on stability, investment, and on attracting the private sector and international partnerships. During a meeting with representatives and head of the African Center for Economic Transformation on the sidelines of the annual meetings of the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank in Washington, Koshok called for reforms in the multilateral international institutions to enhance the representation and the role of African and emerging countries. He highlighted the importance of innovative financing solutions and debt for investment swaps to reduce debt and debt service costs, saying that easing debt burdens and expanding access to affordable financing were crucial for sustainable development.
Yes, welcome back, dear viewers, and to shed more light concerning the transformation system for the debt burden in the African continent. We are delighted to be joined over the phone with Mr. Dr. Ayman Ghoneim, the economic expert. Dr. Ayman, it's a pleasure having you with us.
Thank you so much, madam. Pleasure is mine.
Our political leadership, President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, is always addressing the African issues as if really they are top priorities for Egypt. When we are talking always, Egypt is always talking on behalf of the African continent, and that was really, that was really over there in the BRICS summit, as President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi in his speech to the summit, he was addressing the issues of the justable or just a system for funding in the African continent. How you find first the issues and how you elaborate this?
Well, actually, the new republic that's now being built by the Egyptian people under the leadership of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi is regaining the Egyptian leadership role not only in the African region, but also in the whole developing world, in the African countries, the Asian countries, the whole southern world. And we've seen this in the speech of President Sisi in front of the BRICS. We've seen this in the participation of President Sisi in Paris summit regarding charting new international charter for international finance. That was in May 2023. President Sisi has always been calling for a new global charter for international finance. He has been calling for the international organizations, the international financial institutions to modernize and revamp their frameworks, their risk management processes and methodology and assessments, in order to cater for the developing needs, for the dynamic and changing needs of the developing countries, especially those countries that were affected by the climatic changes, those countries that need huge finances in order to develop and to modernize their infrastructure. Actually, these calls resulted into many initiatives on the international arena. We've seen the BRICS decided to establish the new development bank that's now being chaired by the former president of Brazil, Mrs. Dilma Rousseff. And that bank actually is a step forward. Actually, it's a concrete step forward, I might say, for the BRICS and for the southern countries to provide to get the finance that they require and that they need in or with favorable or with, let's say, with fair conditions, with fair terms and conditions. Egypt has also called for the increasing participation of the developing countries, the countries of the South, in deciding the direction of the international economy, and has been calling for increasing the bilateral trade between southern countries using their local currencies. So all these initiatives actually portray the Egyptian leadership under President Sisi and show the respect that Egypt now commands under his leadership.
Yeah. Dr. Ayman, when we talk about the big financial institutions like the World Bank, like the IMF, they are lending the developing countries with unjust and unfair funding system, which is actually with double interest rates. And that had addressed also President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi many times, and also it was tangible in his speech in the BRICS, as he asked for a fair and just funding system special for the developing countries to enhance the sustainable development transformation and to enhance also the climate change projects, etc. How do you also find this?
Well, actually, this problem is twofold. Now, first of all, the international financial institutions, they all operate with the G7 countries, and those G7 countries have high inflation rates during the last 5 or 6 years, and that's why they had to increase their interest rates to unprecedented levels. Actually, we've seen in the U.S.
They are lending the developing countries with more interest than the G7s or the industrial countries, actually.
Well, what we've seen is that the U.S., for example, increased its interest rates by 500 basis points during the last 6 years. Before it was reduced by 50 basis points last September. And the interest rate in the U.S., for instance, it reached unprecedented levels since like more than 22 years. Mm-hmm. So the problem is that such increase in the interest rate led, of course, to increasing the burden on the developing countries in procuring the finance that they require. Now the problem is that the international or the leading international financial institutions, they operate with the G7 currencies. So it's an interwoven and interrelated financial system. So the solution, or one of the new solutions, was to foster the bilateral trade and bilateral finance using local currencies. And I believe that would be the role of the new development bank, especially that countries like China and India, they have a lot to offer in terms of capital goods, in terms of infrastructure, in terms of expertise, and all what they offer can be paid by their local currencies. So I believe that the future will see a boost in the international trade or the bilateral trade with such countries, and a shifting from the conventional international financial system.
Yeah. All right. I mean, in such a concern, how do you find the collaboration way? I mean, the collaboration methodologies to support the African continent or the African countries more in such respect? I mean, in the transformation of reducing the debt burdens in the developing sustainable development. I mean, we're tackling, Egypt is in particular tackling very huge projects in the African countries, in the infrastructure, in the banking sector, in the energy, renewable and new energies, in the electricity, etc. How we can be more tangibly existing more in the African countries, your point of view?
Well, what you're talking about actually touches three main points. First, the collaboration between the African countries and the Eastern countries, especially India and China, and how such collaboration would enhance the economies of the African countries and the build-up of the infrastructure in those countries, and then what could Egypt contribute to such collaboration and to such development, and how could it benefit from such collaboration? Well, yes, of course, we've seen a lot of initiatives, especially by China, and to a great extent also by India, regarding the cooperation with the African countries and financing African countries through their local currencies. And,
through with the BRICS, you mean?
Enticing them to buy.
You mean in the BRICS?
Excuse me?
You mean particular within the BRICS, the framework of the BRICS?
Yes, the framework of the BRICS, or sponsored by the BRICS. China,
and that's why, President El-Sisi, he asked it also for that the developing countries should also trade in their current local currencies.
No, I can't hear them, sorry.
Yep.
What did you say?
President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, in his speech at the BRICS, he asked it also for that the developing countries should also trade in their local or domestic currencies as well.
Exactly. That's why the initiatives by China, especially by China in cooperating with Africa, it fosters two things. Number one, it fosters the financing and the bilateral trade with local currencies. And it would be a breakthrough if you can import the capital goods, the production, especially production machines, power plants, factories, etc., from China in the Chinese local currency. And if this could be done through the new development bank, then this would be really a breakthrough. And Egypt can contribute to this because Egypt is the key to Africa, and our construction companies, our contractors, they can provide the required expertise and the required manpower for such building processes, especially with Egypt's leading role in the BRICS. So I believe the coming future will see a lot of development in that field.
Yes, Dr. Ayman Ghoneim, economic expert, many thanks for being with us and for your insights. And now we are moving to our domestic economic growth, which is supposed to be like 4% by the year of 2025. This has the IMF measures expected to boost Egypt's economic growth, as Egypt's economic growth is expected to rise to 4% by the end of June 2025, as austerity measures linked to an International Monetary Fund, the IMF program, taking effect, according to the Reuters poll released on Thursday.
Egypt's economic growth is expected to rise to 4% by the end of June 2025. This as austerity measures linked to an International Monetary Fund IMF program take effect. The maiden forecast from the poll conducted from October 9th to 23rd and involving 13 economists predicts that gross domestic product GDP growth will further accelerate to 4.7% in 2025-2026 and reach 5.3% by 2026-2027. As reported by central bank figures, GDP growth fell to 2.4% in 2023-2024, down from 3.8% the previous year. In February, Egypt transferred rights to develop real estate along its Mediterranean coast to the United Arab Emirates Sovereign Fund, ADQ, for $24 billion, setting the stage for an $8 billion financial reform package agreement with the International Monetary Fund in March.
Welcome back, dear viewers. And of course, we all remember the miserable time of the COVID-19 and how we've been like all the countries have been isolated. But we also remember how Egypt tackled to support the African countries actually within this time. By sending and providing the vaccination to the African countries. And now there is the outbreak of the mpox also in Africa, and that's why fostering regulatory collaboration to improve access to mpox medicines and vaccination, international regulatory have published a report highlighting their considerations on the development and clinical trials and availability of vaccinations and therapeutics for mpox. The report presents actually the outcomes of a workshop that was organized by the EMA under the umbrella of the International Coalition of Medicines Regulatory Authorities, or the ICMRA. Let's watch.
International regulators have published a report highlighting their considerations on the development, clinical trials, and availability of vaccines and therapies for mpox. The report presented the outcome of a workshop that was organized by EMA under the umbrella of the International Coalition of Medicines Regulatory Authorities, ICMRA. In August 2024, the World Health Organization, WHO, declared mpox a public health emergency of international concern, PHEIC. The viral illness caused by the monkeypox virus is endemic in certain parts of Central and West Africa. The availability of medicines has been one of the biggest challenges during outbreaks. Meeting participants discussed the current status of the virus and the availability of mpox vaccines in African countries. Other topics tackled included efforts to fill the evidence gap regarding the use of vaccines in children and pregnant women, the need to establish effective surveillance systems, and the best regulatory pathways for approval of new vaccines and treatments. International regulators stress the need for large clinical trials, which are most likely to generate the evidence required to enable faster development and rapid approval of mpox medicines. They also agreed that using a more coordinated approach would be the most effective strategy to tackle current and future public health emergencies.
Well, that was, dear viewers, the end of our today's episode of Africa Today. We hope you did enjoy it with us. Always, for more news and updates, join us at NileInternational.net. Many thanks for watching. Goodbye.